There he is. So I put scores here, games here. That really is supposed to be the fact that Baylor was late on Thursday night. Baylor lost.
Yeah.
So to that section, we didn't want to start. Hey, we never did play a couple nights ago.
Yeah.
And I can let's get it. And I'll have post game stats up on my computer. Yep.
Okay.
I'm doing it.
Welcome into Frogs Today pregame live, coming to you live from the Courtside Club. Big game today, boys. Both teams going into the game undefeated. Only one is going to come out a winner. But let's not get ahead of ourselves. Before we get there, we want to go ahead and talk about last week's game, TCU and KU. TCU coming out on top. Tell me what you liked. Tell me what you didn't.
Well, Maggie, I think it's really impressive anytime you can take a team on the road in a hostile environment. I know, first of all, we have to disabuse ourselves of our baggage that we carry about Kansas, right?
Yes.
Kansas football is not the Kansas of old. They were a sellout crowd. Game day was there. It was a hostile environment against a good football team, and TCU came in and took care of business. They faced a little bit of adversity in the second and third quarters there, but ultimately the goal is to win the football game.
Yes.
And as Sonny Dykes has said multiple times over the course of this season, it's hard to win football games at this level. Anytime you can come away with the win, that's a good thing, and TCU managed to do that last week.
Absolutely. Recurring theme this year in the Big 12 is just competitiveness.
Oh, yeah.
Parity. There are no bad teams in this league. You can't imagine Oklahoma being at the bottom of the list.
Absolutely
but even
not.
them, they're challenging Kansas right now as we speak. And TCU going to a hostile environment, like you spoke to, college game day, sellout crowd. That's no small feat. For a team to that point that hadn't had a big test. That was the biggest test to date. I think TCU passed with flying colors. A lot of things to plug, a lot of holes to plug, things to work on. But you walk away from that game like, we can beat any game. This conference is right for the taking.
Oh, yeah.
And a team that stays consistent, that has the offense, the defense, and the mentality that we do, we're ready to take on the Big 12.
Absolutely, and I was there on the sidelines, getting able to witness that atmosphere that was going on. And I mean, guys, it was insane. They were doing their little cornfield wave. It was pretty intimidating.
Yeah.
It was culty, but intimidating. I think, honestly, at the game, the vibe that I got was, it's a crime to be a Horned Frog. It was very hostile, as you guys said, and that's exactly what we saw the entire time. And when we come back, we've got a very special guest.
Yep. JD.
Welcome back into Frogs today. As promised, we have a very special guest with us here, Jeremiah Donati, or ADJD, whatever you want to call him. And Jeremiah, you tweeted out like 3 days ago that it was another sold-out crowd. How is athletics just sponsoring this culture here at TCU? I mean, this is something that I, as a student, have never experienced until this year.
Hey, I've been saying this all week. We've got a lot of momentum. It's hard to define, but you know when you have it. And so we're fortunate we do.
Yeah.
I mean, what a perfect day. All eyes are going to be on the Frogs today on ABC 2:30. I'm so excited for our students and our fans, right? Before the season, you lay out a plan for what success could look like, but, until you actually taste it, it's just fun to be here and excited for our fans. I think I already see them piling in here, which is great. So it's going to be a great day here for
Absolutely. Hope there's a bunch more purple than orange in here today.
Yeah.
Well, you got the message out loud and clear that folks needed to show up early because of this sellout crowd. But, you guys, you've experienced quite a bit this season as far as hostile crowd environments go. Last week up in Kansas, there was a sellout crowd up there game day. We've talked about that a little bit on the pregame show already. But how do you work to make sure that the game day atmosphere here puts as much pressure on opposing teams as you guys have experienced elsewhere?
Well, it starts with the students. It's always started with the students. And you all remember that from your time here, right? And so when we've had great student attendance and lively student crowds, it makes it really difficult on the opponent. I love going. Well, one thing I'm going to do when the guys get here and the kids get there, I'll go down and start slapping five with them because I want them to know, for me, how important it is because everybody feeds off them. The team does, the rest of the fan base does. So it starts with them, but it's you gotta be intentional about it, right? And you gotta do things to get them involved. You saw Sonny was on campus this week, thanking everybody and signing autographs. So you just got to keep pouring into them because they have a lot of things they could be doing. And so we're just grateful that they're going to spend their time with us here this afternoon.
Nice. Talk about intentionality. Explain to us kind of the different mindset with the change of the guard with how we market and promote TCU to the greater public, to the national audience. It's been very obvious. I saw a hype video with the new uniforms and things like that are more readily just prevalent in TCU leading up to a big game. How have we shifted our focus in that way?
Well, this coaching staff and Coach Dykes really wants it to make much more player-centric. They don't, none of them, including especially Coach Dykes, really feels comfortable in the limelight there. They really want this program to be about the players. I think that at this time in our program, it was time to open it up a little bit and have the players have a bigger voice. So you're seeing that all through our social media and our access to practice and that type of thing. And they're comfortable with that, and it's really kind of more indicative, I think, of our world right now and what you're seeing around college football. So we've got more surprises up our sleeve, by the way.
Okay.
But,
a little
teaser, and we're certainly not looking ahead, but it's really neat to see the players because they love it and it's a big deal for them. And this is a way to kind of elevate their platform. And that's part of what college is about is developing as a young person, as an individual too. So it's fun to see them be a little bit more outspoken and get a chance to do things like what I'm doing now and talking to you all.
You talk about players. One in particular, Max Duggan, has had a profound impact on this team this year, but realistically, he's had a profound impact on this program like many quarterbacks before him. Talk to us a little bit about how Max Duggan has impacted TCU, not just as a football program, but as a university.
Well, geez, he's kind of a dream come true. He is the quintessential student athlete. He's an unbelievable student. He's an unbelievable young man. He's an unbelievable football player. But he's the type of guy, I've got two daughters. He's the type of guy that you want, your daughters to date. He's the type of guy that if you'd be honored to call as your son. And you guys heard what Sonny said earlier about him this year, but it's all true. He's very humble. I remember talking to him when NIL came out a year or so ago. He was so much more focused on getting the team ready to play. He could care less about an NIL deal. And so that just kind of shows you where his mindset is. He is just a tough son of a gun. And, I was teasing him, he's got a COVID year. And I know, I don't want to stir up any controversy, but you can imagine that conversation is going to start because I think he's showing that he can also be more than just a runner. More than just throwing on the move. He can drop back and he can stay in the pocket and he can make throws. And so, geez, who wouldn't want to have him at the next level if he can do all those things? And the guys play hard for him. Yes. They want to play for him. That's the biggest sign of a leader is, when you strap them up and you put the helmet on, are the guys behind you with you 100%? And they are. So I couldn't be more proud of him. Obviously, his what he's got to go through is pretty well documented, but to see him come on the other side of it, and we know the season's still young, but he's off to just an unbelievable start.
And he's off to an unbelievable start just nationally as well, getting so much recognition. And when we come back, we're going to be breaking down Oklahoma State and TCU game. Stay with us. Welcome back into Frogs Today live at the Courtside Club. We're going to get into that OSU TCU breakdown. But before we get into that, let's go ahead and look at some scores from around the Big 12. We know that Baylor lost on Thursday night.
Yep.
Let's talk about that game. What did we like? What didn't we like? I mean, I liked the Baylor losing part.
Yeah,
it's always good. It's always good when Baylor takes an L. But what I really noticed from this game on Thursday night up in Morgantown against West Virginia was the fact that West Virginia continues to have, I think, one of the best home field advantages in the conference.
Yes.
It's absolutely crazy. My papers can't handle how much of West Virginia's home field advantage they've got. But, you know, when you think about Baylor, and I know we talked about this, Marshall, a couple weeks ago on the pregame show, they have Gary Bohannon, Big 12 championship winning quarterback, on campus as the starter.
He's in your program.
And this spring, they decided to go with Blake Shapen at quarterback instead. And so Gary Bohannon transfers out. He's at South Florida now. Blake Shapen is now the guy, and he goes on the road. Doesn't have his best game in a hostile environment that you have to wonder how would Gary Bohannon have handled that. It's still just a very confusing thing to me to have watched them kind of move a Big 12 championship quarterback out of the program.
I mean, insert idiom here. You know, grass always greener. It's the known is better than the unknown. They had a guy who led them to the top of the Big 12 last year, and for whatever reason decided they might be able to upgrade. I get the sentiment, but things are not working out for them. And it's not just one game. It's been the entire season. They don't look in sync. They don't look as explosive and dangerous on the offensive side. Defense is Dave Aranda's specialty. The defense is still very formidable. It's keeping them in games. But at the end of the day, I think the Big 12 is a league without a QB, a capable, competent QB, explosive, measured QB. I don't think you can win and compete at the highest level in the Big 12.
No.
It's true. And then on the other side of things, you know, this was a huge game for West Virginia and Neil Brown's job security. You know, West Virginia is one of those programs right now that's kind of teetering on the edge of relevance or lack thereof. Any conference win that you can get at this point is going to be huge for just confidence, for morale, for culture. So this was a really big win for West Virginia to come from behind, too, and do it in the last few minutes like they did on Thursday night. You know, that's just such a big deal. But it goes back to what we've been talking about all year. This conference is wide open.
Top to bottom.
We think that this game behind us today is going to have championship implications for the Big 12. But in reality, we could very well get to the end of the season and see a team with 2, maybe even 3 losses playing in the championship game.
Right on cue, you talked about other scores. Please update us on the Texas-Iowa State score.
Oh, boy. Right now, guys, so we have Texas up 17-7 on Iowa State right now. I mean, I personally did pick Texas.
Sure.
So I'm liking the score right now.
Yeah.
What are you guys thinking about that score?
Well, I think coming off the Oklahoma win, each team that plays Oklahoma the subsequent week, you're like, all right, how good was that win? Oklahoma's having some struggles right now. I don't think any of us are too empathetic for that, but the point still remains. But we thought Texas, with Quinn Ewers back, would be slinging the ball around. We thought, okay, this is a team, even with 2 losses, you know, they have their odds-on favorite to win the Big 12 still, whatever Vegas, however you view Vegas. But, you know, they're still got to click. Quinn Ewers is still behind on reps. Getting hurt the Alabama game, you argue they could win the game if he was still in, but he's multiple games behind in his development, in his rapport with the receivers and the offense. So I still think they're a formidable team, a good team. The Iowa State score shows it, but you would assume they'd be up by a little more, judging by last week's performance. But, hey, again, Big 12, top to bottom, deepest league in the
Absolutely.
It's really true. And you look at the other side of the field, too, with Iowa State. This is a team that, you know, we saw what Kansas State did to Oklahoma to kind of prove your point here. And then last week they go and they play Farmageddon against Iowa State. They only scored 10 points.
Love
it. That game 10-9 up in Ames. That's the best.
Has anyone trademarked that yet? Farmageddon?
It's pretty great. But, you know, so Iowa State defensively, just numbers-wise, they're a middle-of-the-pack defense.
Sure.
And they're having some legitimate success slowing down some of these more quote-unquote high-powered offenses in the conference. And so, you know, it'll be really interesting to see how that final score shapes out with them in Texas today. Like you said, Quinn Ewers is back, but he's still a little bit behind the chains, so to speak, as far as reps are concerned. But I will say this, too, just about the University of Texas, their program this year. I don't like to get into the, well, if so-and-so had happened, such and such would have happened, right? Like, they lost to Alabama by a point. Hudson Card played admirably in that game. Also got banged up in that game. So, you know, you could play the what-if
ifs and buts with candy and nuts. It's hard to get in that game.
Exactly right. The reality is that Texas is 1-1 in Big 12 play, probably going to be 2-1 after this week with the win over Iowa State, and that puts them in a really good position moving down the road.
Brings us back to the importance of this game. I mean, you've got 2 undefeated teams primed to take over, and carry some momentum through the rest of this conference. But you look at our schedule, Kansas State's next week, regardless of what happens. Look at Oklahoma State's schedule. They've got a big game next week. It's just every week you got to come, strap your chin strap, and be ready to show up, bring your best. And the team, it's going to be a war of attrition. The team is most prepared, the most gritty, the team that's really just fighting through what is the quality of the Big 12.
Yeah, we've talked about the Sooners a little bit. I know they're playing right now.
Oh, they are playing right now. And let me tell you guys, they're up on Kansas right now, 35-21. Look who's trying to get some momentum going right here. I mean, I would understand. Getting shut out against Texas last week, your big rival. I mean, you got to show up. People are talking about you nationally. It's embarrassing.
Today, but I would argue the heat has been on Brent Venables more than any place in the state of Texas, in the country, on Brent Venables and the start they've had. So their response, shows some promise. But again, this is a tough league.
OU just has this rapport of being just this excellent football program, and that's just not what we're seeing at all. Yeah. Not even seeing good football.
Yep. Right, and but it helps when you have your starting quarterback. Talking about Quinn Ewers a couple moments ago. Yep. This game with the Jayhawks and the Sooners, Dylan Gabriel is back. He's playing pretty well. Yeah. That's why they're ahead at halftime. And on the other side of the field, Jalen Daniels got that shoulder injury last week against TCU. Yeah. So they've got Jason Bean in there now, who slung the ball around against the Horned Frogs pretty well in the second half of that game, but obviously not having as much success today in Norman. It's so hit or miss from week to week. Yeah. Everything kind of hinges on health. Yeah. Which, talk about the programs behind us. We're going to get into some of that in just a minute. Into it. Absolutely. The Frogs have been really healthy so far this year, outside of just a couple of guys that have been missing. Oklahoma State.
Is there a piece of wood I can knock on?
Right, yeah.
Going right seriously.
But anywho, and then on the other side of the field, Oklahoma State's pretty banged up. I got an injury report for us just in a little bit.
Absolutely.
But the Sooners and Jayhawks, that halftime score just tells me exactly what we've been talking about. You can't take anything for granted. Mm-hmm. You got to approach every game like it's 1 of 12. Yep. Be as prepared as you possibly can. Take care of your own business. Go out there and play as hard as you can.
Absolutely. And let's go ahead and get into that Oklahoma State TCU breakdown. Jamie, you've got some injuries. Let's hear them.
So, on the Oklahoma State side of things, they're going to be without a couple key guys, including their starting center, Patrick Wilson. Wilson went down last week in their game against Texas Tech. He will not be available today, and that is absolutely huge for this game because he is a veteran guy. He's a 3-year starter for them, and that opens things up for TCU's defensive line. We've been talking throughout this season, guys, about how TCU's defensive line has struggled to create pressure on quarterbacks at times. And without your starting center, without your guy, Marshall, you know how important it is to have that guy calling out protections, making adjustments at the line of scrimmage. When you lose that guy, have another guy coming in that place, that can really change the dynamic for an offensive line.
Absolutely, and I have it here in my notes. We're going to talk about it later, the importance of the offensive line versus the front seven on both sides. But, your signal caller. Each offense is a little different. Sometimes the QB corrects the center, but initially most offenses rely on the center to get the rest of the linemen in line. We point out a Mike. We point out a strong side, a weak side, stuff like that. So you lose a guy who's a 3-year starter in an offense that's as high-powered and versatile as a Mike Gundy offense, and that's a big deal, especially with the things that Joe Gillespie can throw at you on defense. And you talk about TCU's pass rush. Listen, we are not built right now to be a dynamic pass rush team. Right. That is intentional. That is on purpose. But that doesn't mean that creating pressure is still not very, very important. On the opposite side, Oklahoma State, their front seven absolutely wants to pin their ears back and create pressure. Right now, there's a stat called havoc, which is just how much chaos you can wreak in the pocket on a QB on the offensive line. Oklahoma State's a top 10 team in havoc in the country. Yeah. So you talk about two stylistic differences right now. And TCU is going to have to show up. But again, that center, getting guys in place for a multiple defense that can bring pressure from all over the field, from D Winters from the second level, from safety level, and stunt and move the defensive line. It's going to be a big test for the Oklahoma State offensive line.
Absolutely. And not an injury, but he went out last game on a targeting call. Kendall Daniels, defensive back, Oklahoma State, will be out for the first half. Mike Gundy commented on that. He did say it was definitely targeting, but it does just kind of suck that they have to sit out for the first half. And I get it. It's a big game.
It's tough, but you got to pay the price for the crime, right? Yeah. There's consequence for your actions. We saw that with Jamoy Hodge against Oklahoma as well, having to sit out the rest of that game after the targeting call that he got. But this is an Oklahoma State secondary that really needs all of their number ones. They're going to be without him in safety for the first half. They're also missing their number 2 cornerback for the entire game to an injury today. Yeah. And this is a secondary that plays a lot of man. Because of that front seven that you were talking about, those guys in the secondary are on an island the majority of the time. TCU offensive guys have been talking about that kind of casually all week.
Yeah.
And this is an Oklahoma State team that gives up a lot of explosive plays. They're the third worst defense against explosive plays in the conference.
That's shocking.
That's a significant detail
Yeah.
when you consider that on the other side of the field, TCU is the number one most explosive offense in the
Just so
not
many
just in
things
the Big
lining
12,
up.
but in the country.
Yeah, exactly.
Feels like things are starting to align there as far as the issues in Oklahoma State secondary. The biggest thing, though, the rumor mill has been churning all week as it does. Started to get a little bit of verification on some of this stuff as well.
Insider Jamie? Okay, that's great.
Spencer Sanders is not 100% today.
Okay.
He was banged up in that Texas Tech game. He missed a couple of practices earlier in this week. He's going to play.
Sure.
Question will be, how limited is he?
Yeah.
And if you can get some of that pressure on him, I'm not saying I want anyone to get hurt.
Of course.
But if you get in someone's cage, rattle them
it can
up
affect
a little
someone.
bit, and then they start thinking about it,
Yeah.
that can totally throw off an entire game plan. And so look for that today for the Horned Frogs to try and create some pressure on Spencer Sanders just to get in his head a little bit because he is not 100% for this game.
Absolutely, and his strength, I think the offenses on both sides of the ball are very similar.
Yeah.
As far as style of play, the actual stats of explosive plays, yards per game on the ground and in the air, and absolutely the quarterbacks too. Both veteran quarterbacks who have an arm, who have accuracy, but also make a lot of plays with their legs. And if one guy is a little beat up, maybe that takes part of his dimension as far as escapability out of the play, and that can absolutely factor into this game. We'll see. As a player, when I sign up to play, I know what I can do.
Yep.
I'm trying to be as clear with my coaches about my limitations and what they can expect from me. But he's going to be a warrior, and I would expect, until we see something to the contrary, I'll expect the normal Spencer.
Absolutely.
But again, that's a factor that we absolutely have to pay attention to.
And then on TCU side of things, Sonny Misi, 4-year guy here, defensive tackle. He's out for the year with the torn pec. We've done that for a couple weeks now. Dom Williams obviously is the starter there. Tymon Mitchell, the Georgia transfer, has been playing a lot as well. But with Misi out these last couple weeks, it's really interesting to see who's rotating in behind those first two guys.
Okay.
Doug Blue Eli is a guy to keep an eye on today. Just as a rotation guy, keeping guys fresh, it's really important along this defensive line, especially when you're in an odd stack like that. And then in the secondary, there was some hope that Miller Bradford might be able to go today. He is officially out with a knee injury as well. So Josh Foster, number 15, is going to get that start at strong safety. That's a big thing for this TCU secondary because we saw Bradford go out after that first series against Kansas.
Yeah.
And the Frogs started giving up some stuff through the air after that. So that's something to keep an eye on today as well.
Absolutely. Both of these defenses with secondaries that are susceptible, that are very open for long plays, and both offenses are looking for long plays. So, we don't necessarily talk betting. That's new to me, but the over-under is 68 points. I would expect an over. I would expect a lot of points to be scored today.
Absolutely.
A lot of balls flying through the air, touchdown scored, and you're hoping that the best quarterback, the best team at the end of the day with the ball in their hands can win this game.
And you know what, guys? Honestly, what I'm hoping for is a way more interesting game than the Thursday NFL football game.
Oh, man.
That's all I got to say.
Oh, man.
I'm just hoping for a more interesting game. And when we come back, we've got more. Welcome back into Frogs Today pregame live. TCU and Oklahoma State gonna play here today. Kickoff about 2:30. Guys, let's go ahead and get into those schemes, offensive and defense for today. What are we thinking?
So I want to start by talking about TCU's offense against Oklahoma State's defense. We just covered a little bit of the injuries in Oklahoma State's secondary, but this is a really interesting matchup. I mentioned the explosive plays already. TCU's top of the conference in explosive plays. Oklahoma State defensively is near the bottom. And why that's important in this game is because of the way Derek Mason likes to scheme up this Oklahoma State defense. They love to bring pressure on a quarterback. They've got, this is a fun fact, the most experienced defensive line in the history of college football.
Wow.
And the way, this sounds like a random wild stat. The way they determined that is the average age of these starting defensive linemen is 24 and a half years old.
Oh,
wow.
And they've combined for, I believe it's around 115 starts in their career.
Oh, my gosh.
So this is a defensive line that, A, is incredibly talented because they've been around for a while. They know the defense that they're playing in because even though this is Derek Mason's first year defensive coordinator, he came in, he learned their play calls, he learned their scheme, and is running things just like the guy who's now at Ohio State as their defensive coordinator was. So there's continuity there and incredibly talented. He's got the flyover happening.
A little bit of a flyover right now.
Hopefully this is how loud TCU's offense makes this stadium.
Oh, absolutely.
But this is a defensive line that knows how to get after the quarterback. They are so good at creating pressure without blitzing. On, I believe it was Baron Morton for Texas Tech last week was pressured 29 times.
Yes.
They only blitzed 6 times in that game, guys.
Yeah.
So this is a defensive line that knows how to create pressure. That's going to be a real challenge for TCU offensively. But we've also seen on the offensive side of the ball for TCU, Marshall, those jet sweeps, playing out in the flats, playing out in space, getting their talented receivers in one-on-one situations. That's going to be available today for the Horned Frogs because Oklahoma State likes to develop all of that pressure up front.
Yeah, you absolutely talk about strengths and weaknesses on Oklahoma State. The defensive front is their strength. That then plays in the secondary, having a little bit less pressure, having to cover a little bit less on the back end than playing so much man. But like you said, they're talented. They have great get off, and they're deep. They rotate guys. They platoon guys. They keep them fresh, and they get after the quarterback. Texas Tech's quarterback last week was battered and bruised at the end of that game, and I guarantee you they're coming to this game looking to get Max Duggan on the ground, mix up the rhythm, not let him scramble as much.
No.
There's a lot that goes into containing a really explosive quarterback like Max. And again, I will talk about this in the future. The onus is going to be on the offensive line. I hope that there's someone who's just taking them by the side, the offensive coach, and be like, hey, this game is on you guys today. We go as an offense and as a team as you go, giving Max time, letting these plays develop. And obviously, Garrett Riley is a great offensive mind. We're seeing it in real time as he's growing into this role. So he's going to have some things planned. I imagine there's going to be some more screens today. We're wide receiver screens, slow screens. I talked last week. TCU was trying to run slow screens against Kansas' front. Kansas had great pass rushes as well. And the key to a slow screen is the meshing, the marrying of the back's pass protection action and the offensive line's release. If the back is too fast out, he gets in front of his blockers, and they can't block for him. And we saw that last week. You get tackled in the open field. If he's too slow, then a defensive line who's trailing the screen can catch up and tackle the back. But those screens slow down a great pass rush. So you look for them, quick ones through receivers to get guys like Quentin Johnson, the ball in his hands, Darius Davis, Tay Barber, all the weapons that we have. There's a variety of ways to get them touches, especially early on in the game, slow the pass rush down, let everyone get in a rhythm, and figure out how exactly Oklahoma State on the defensive front is going to be handling us today.
And this is an opportunity to get guys like Amari DiMercato involved in the pass blocking game. He is, in my opinion, the best running back at pass blocking on this TCU roster, so we're probably going to see him a lot more today than maybe we have in the past 5 games. But this is an opportunity, too, to get some tight ends involved as well. Jared Wiley could have a very big game today. Jaquarius Spivey as well, just getting them out in that mesh game as well.
You mentioned that. I interrupt right now. Garrett Wiley is a mismatch.
Yes.
This guy is 6'6", 6'7", 240. He's a pass-catching demon.
Yeah.
He's a mismatch. He is there for the taking.
Yeah.
There's not a linebacker, I think, in the country who can stay with him. He's got a height advantage, a size advantage. I absolutely agree with you. Who knows if Garrett Riley will kind of make that a priority, but it's absolutely there for the taking.
Look, this is, and like we've said a couple times now, this is an opportunity to just get your skill guys involved. And if Max Duggan, the best counter, in my opinion, to a really strong pass rush is a mobile, big gritty quarterback who can throw on the
I've
run.
heard of one of those
I think
before.
we've got
I think
one
we
on the
have one.
sideline here
Absolutely.
for
I
TCU
feel
with
like
Max
Max
Duggan.
kind
Yeah,
of
he
sounds
fits
like
that.
that. Did you just describe
Yeah.
Max Duggan?
I think I might have just
absolutely.
described Max Duggan as being a really good counter to this Oklahoma State defense. Let's switch over to the other side of the ball here for a second, though, and talk about TCU's defense against this Oklahoma State offense. Because, when Coach David Bowden and I broke down film on Facing the Frogs this week, we started to notice some incredible similarities between TCU's offense and Oklahoma State's. Because you look at Max Duggan, we've described him a little bit. He's a mobile guy.
Yeah.
Capable passer on the run, also capable more so this year in the pocket than in years past. Spencer Sanders has a similar game.
Yeah.
Very mobile, able to create on the run in the passing game out of the pocket. This is an offense that likes to do a lot of things the same way as TCU. Screens, getting their skill guys in favorable one-on-ones out in the flats.
Yes.
Using a good running game to kind of support the passing game. This is an opportunity, I think, for TCU's defense to play against an offense that they really see pretty frequently in practice.
Absolutely. And you talk about the similarities between the quarterbacks. A big part of that is the way they take care of the ball. I think that's a testament to them being multiple-year starters, guys who have ascended and gotten better every single year. It's demonstrably evident in their stats, but as they carry themselves and lead teams, both Spencer and Max have both elevated their games to where they are right now. I think a big thing that quarterbacks are directly in charge of is turnovers.
Yep.
These are both low turnover teams, offenses that take care of the football. You want to keep it that way if you can, but also if you're a defense, if you're TCU's defense, you want to get opportunistic, take advantage of tips, errant throws, ball security from running backs, and vice versa on the Oklahoma State defense, because turnovers, since they're so infrequent between these teams, are going to be even bigger in a game like today.
We've talked a little bit about Spencer Sanders and the fact that he is dinged up today, but the reality is that this Oklahoma State passing game is still incredibly potent. They've got 4 receivers that have 16 or more receptions already this year. They have a different statistical leader for receptions, receiving yards, and receiving touchdowns, which to me signals that they are totally confident in all of these guys to go out and make big plays for them, and they're capable of taking advantage. If you're trying to scheme to take one guy out, they're going to go to the other two. It's not a big deal for them. But the reality is, too, that means that for the Frogs today, Trey Tomlinson and Josh Newton are going to have big games out there at cornerback for these Horned Frogs, because they're going to find themselves in situations where they're matched up against talented guys. We know their talent, their skill level is elite as well. That's going to be a really fun matchup to watch out there on the edge.
And I think they have a little bit to redeem themselves. I mean, Kansas, for all the talent they have and the performance they've had this year, Kansas made a lot of explosive plays on TCU.
1 hour till kickoff, by the way.
Froghorn on time as always, like the Navy Master Clock. We saw, Kansas is a very unique offense. They run a different scheme than everyone else. It's based on play action, a lot of deep crossing routes. But stuff like that can be easily incorporated into an offense that's so experienced like Mike Gundy. And, from week to week, you're looking at, like, how did this guy get beat? Where are their vulnerabilities?
Absolutely.
And we absolutely showed some vulnerabilities on the back end there.
Absolutely.
So it's going to be on us. I'm sure they've been practicing all week about adjustments, communication, if we're in man, if we're on coverage, off coverage, if we're playing halves, quarters. And the play last week where they jet motion to it was a 1x4. The jet went to a 5-on-0 side, a complete overload. You didn't see our safety shift over a man, and they had a wide open tight end streaking down the field. It's stuff like that you have to work on. That's an unscouted look. It's a little thing, but it's something that, they say the NFL is a copycat league. College football is absolutely copycat. Absolutely. So, I can imagine my Gunny's watching that film like, oh, okay, there might be something here.
Nice.
Same with us when you're self-scouting. So communication during the week, adjustments, having veteran guys like THT to lead that group. Josh, we had him here earlier. The guys have their heads on straight. We know they're a good group, and we know they're going to put the work in, and they're going to be prepared today.
And that's one of those things, too, with the injury to Millard Bradford, that they probably sat down with Josh Foster in film time this week and said, hey, just pay attention. That's one of those opportunities when you're a backup and you're kind of thrown into the fire there in a second half where everybody's scoring touchdowns. I think there were 6 touchdowns scored in the third quarter of that TCU Kansas game. Your head's just your head's spinning, right? You probably feel like you're a little bit of a blender there. So I guarantee you the coaching staff sat down. Paul Gonzalez, the safeties coach, did with Josh Foster and said, hey, we trust you. We believe in you. That's why you're on this roster. Now, here are some things we need to work on and fix for this week.
Absolutely. And I think something that I want to touch on is that they take this game one game at a time. And I know it's become a cliche in sports overall, but that's what you see in their culture. And there's truth to that. We've seen them every week come out here and play each game like it's a new game. They're prepared, and they don't underprepare, even if they know a guy might be hurt, might be a little banged up. They're still going to come out here and give it their all.
Yeah.
But before we go to break, I want to go ahead and talk about highlight one player from the offense. Each of you, go.
I will cheat and say the entire offensive unit.
Oh.
Offensive line unit.
Fair enough.
Okay.
Fair enough.
Tackles Brandon Coleman and Andrew Coker. I'm calling on those guys to step up. They're going to have to keep the pocket clean. They're going to have to take clean sets, get off the ball, no penalties, keep us in front of the sticks, and keep Max clean. Give him time to make his reads, get the ball in our playmakers' hands against a really, really good defensive line front. It's going to be a test. I think they're up to the challenge, but that is going to determine how today goes. Obviously, the other team is going to put up points. And so you're looking at a situation where you don't want to be kicking field goals. You don't want to be getting stopped on 3rd and short, 4th and short. We want to be an efficient, optimized offense, and that starts with giving Max time to go through his reads, go through his progressions.
One thing that I've observed this year is that TCU has not had the same leading receiver in back-to-back games. Last week was the Quentin Johnson game. He went out and reminded everybody why he's a potential first-round draft pick in the NFL next year. We've seen big games from Darius Davis. We've seen Savion Williams come out and show up. We've seen Tay Barber. We've seen Gunnar Henderson with big plays. This is the Jared Wiley game. We've already talked about it a little bit. I've been watching. I saw that mismatch 2 in film this week. 6'6", impossible for a linebacker to guard. And when you've got to take care of all of these big threats on the outside with Quentin Johnson and Savion and Darius and Tay, who's left to cover a guy like Jared Wiley? All he's going to be able to do, he's going to be free all day to get a little chip, help out those guys, Coker and Coleman along the line, chip those defensive ends, keep them off of Max, and then he's going to get out there 6 to 10 yards in space and just be wide open, ready for his quarterback to throw him the football.
Absolutely. Just playing that Tony Gonzalez box out routes, use your
going
body.
Going up for a rebound.
You give Max, we call it a catching radius, give him a big radius so we can throw the ball, a little room for error, and make a play. And I agree. There's a mismatch there, waiting to take it. Whether we choose to or not remains to be seen. Tight ends in the spread scheme seem to be a lesser thing, coming from the NFL, coming from more pro systems. But he's there. And it's open, and it's there. So if we choose to integrate him, he can have a monster day, and that's something you're not used to saying about a tight end in the Big 12.
It's not. But, you look at the way Sonny Dykes and Garrett Riley used Grant Calcaterra last year at SMU. That's a perfect example of what Jared Wiley could be in this offense, a guy who's, used in the blocking game, yes, and has that potential to just be a huge receiving threat on any given day when the opportunity arises.
Absolutely. And just touching on Quentin Johnson a little bit, last time he played, he had 14 catches for 207 yards. And you know who tweeted that out? RG3. And he said this is why he'll be playing on Sundays. Just before we go ahead and boost Jarrett Wiley after the game, had to get that in about Quentin Johnson. Let's go ahead and switch over to the defense. Who do you have impacting the game?
I have THT. He's a mainstay, but he's the guy that if they choose to throw at him, he's got to be a shutdown corner. But if he's playing up to his ability, Spencer's going to look at him and just go another direction, and that shrinks the field for an Oklahoma State explosive offense. So if he's up to his standard that we know is very, very high, and he's playing to this level, that makes the game easier for the other 10 guys on defense, right? And so it's easy to say because he is a great player on defense, but when he plays to his standard, that changes the landscape when you have a corner like that. Not everyone has the luxury of having a corner who could cover your best wide receiver. And so I look for him to have a really big game today. They're going to be tested. They're going to throw go balls. They're going to do 50-50 jump balls, and you're going to have to make a play. That's mano-a-mano. That's the stuff we like. Fight in a phone booth. I think he's got the mentality for it, but he's got to show up today big, and that will trickle down to the rest of the defense.
Absolutely. I think for me, I need to see something from Dylan Horton today. When you've got an Oklahoma State offensive line without their center, and you've got a guy like Dominic Williams in the middle of that TCU defensive line who's totally capable of filling gaps and commanding double teams, I think Oklahoma State's going to send those guards towards Dom Williams today. I think these defensive ends for TCU are going to have more one-on-one opportunities than we've seen in recent weeks, and I need to see Dylan Horton creating pressure, winning his one-on-ones, getting leverage on that offensive tackle and pushing them back into Spencer Sanders. We've talked a little bit about Sanders and his being banged up already. The more you can get hands in Sanders' face, the more you can throw him off his rhythm. You're going to throw this whole Oklahoma State offense off their rhythm. Dylan Horton, show me something today. I love you. He's so well-spoken. He's
Yeah.
so quiet and, just kind of unassuming off the field. I need to see the beast inside of Dylan Horton come out on
Beast,
this
I like
football
it.
field.
And on that note, stylistically, our defense, TCU's defense, is built to more sit back.
Yep.
You're going to make teams drive 12, 13, 14, 15 plays and make you execute all the way down the field. But that doesn't mean that our defensive lineman can't be disruptive. That doesn't mean we want you to be passive. There's going to be play action passes where you're going to have to convert from run blocking or shedding for a run and then into rushing the passer. And those are the opportunities where you get a lineman off balance, a center who maybe doesn't know where to go, an offensive line unit that's not used to working with each other. And those are the opportunities for Dylan, absolutely.
1,000%. You talked about Gillespie. He loves to drop 8, drop 7.
Yeah.
We didn't see a lot of that against Kansas, but we're probably going to see a lot more of that today.
Yes.
Absolutely. And when we come back, there's a lot more where this came from, so don't go anywhere. Welcome back into Frogs Today pregame live. Maggie Hale, Marshall, and Jamie here with us today. Let's go ahead, guys, get into this atmosphere. I mean, I see a crowd of fans coming in, mostly purple, some orange. I'm not mad about it. It's just bodies in the stadium.
Yeah.
What are you guys seeing?
Look, this is just such an incredible atmosphere for a TCU football game. It's the second sellout in a row. This is as energetic as I've felt this stadium since 2017.
Yeah.
Kenny Hill's senior year, when we had that offense that was cruising just kind of like this one is now.
Absolutely.
Like Jeremiah Donati said something that I thought was really powerful, though, earlier on when he was on the show, and that is this whole stadium feeds off of the student section.
Yeah.
Oh,
and
yeah.
I know you didn't have much student section experience in your time here, Marshall.
A little preoccupied.
But yeah, you were busy that day. But Maggie and I had a lot of student section experience in our times here at TCU, and I can tell you that when that place is loud and bumping, that thing, the energy there is untouchable.
They're right on the visiting team's bench.
Mosh pit. You're right behind the opposing team. There were a couple times, I was here when you were here in Mountain West era. Those Wyoming players, those New Mexico players, those San Diego State players, they could not handle.
They were hearing it, man.
They were hearing it from the TCU student section. My hope is that today these students get after Oklahoma State just enough to keep them thinking about the guys behind them instead of the guys in front of them.
Absolutely. And, the Big 12 is full of hostile environments. And TCU, we want to be a place where people just loathe coming to play. They see us on the schedule as an away game. They're like, oh, man, we got to go to Fort Worth. TCU is going to be good. We got to deal with their football team, but also we got to deal with the Carter. We got to deal with the student section. We got to deal with maybe the heat, maybe this, maybe that. You want them thinking about their atmosphere, their surroundings in these moments when they're not thinking about the game. And that's why home field advantages matter. Obviously, some places have them, some places don't. They're more coordinated other places. But TCU, I'll put it up there with any place. We've done such a great job of building this place up. intentionally expanding the students behind the opposing bench, and making sure they feel the energy in this place. And not only that, I know, speaking firsthand, asking the players, they feed off that.
Yeah.
You see recruits on the sideline, they're looking over there. All this stuff matters. It has a cumulative effect to boosting TCU and having this home presence be something that teams just do not look forward to.
Yeah, absolutely.
Marshall, you mentioned when Donati was on set earlier, marketing, and just the shift that we've seen and like the social media presence of the TCU football accounts on Instagram and on Twitter. As a player, how much does that impact you? Because I know it impacts the fans. It gets them hyped up for the game. It gets them ready to be here and to be loud.
Right.
But for you as a player, what does that do for you as far as energy is concerned, or does that even really have an effect on this thing?
I mean, it does and it doesn't. You know, it's kind of a bad waffle answer, but like there are times when you absolutely see that they're like, I got goosebumps seeing the hype video for the uniforms that we're wearing today.
Yeah.
If you're not here in person, if you're not watching on TV, get ready. These are TCU's best and most bold uniforms they have.
I love them.
But the video encompassing that to promote it is not something that I'm used to. And as a player, I'm like, all right, they want to put our best foot forward. They want us to be proud and show pride in what we have to offer and what we can do. And the blood coming out of a Horned Frog's eyes is part of that. It's woven into the uniform.
It's all branding.
It's all branding. And so that to me shows just an effort to make this a holistic program that's really outward facing, showing what the greatness that is Fort Worth, the greatness that is TCU, and this program that's been built up. And that to me as a player, it doesn't affect my everyday, but walking out of the running down the tunnel, feeling the concrete on the side, and then you hear a roar of the crowd, the smoke, all that stuff is exciting as a player. So it's not something that'll make or break you, but that is definitely an edge for a program.
And it's got to be in moments like that, too, where the message from the coaching staff day after day after day about staying locked in, worrying about yourself, taking care of business, all of that has to factor in, too.
Yes, definitely. And you figure out, hey, I can control what I can control, but I know that the people behind the scenes, the staff, the amazing hardworking people here at TCU are taking care of us. They're looking out for our best interests, the best interests of the program. They're promoting us and putting us out there as we should, because they've earned their ranking right now. They've earned this spot, being undefeated, playing in big games like this. That's the whole point of this, is to have big games in Fort Worth, crowd streaming in of both sides, and having a raucous atmosphere that people love to come watch, getting game days here, getting big broadcasts here. That is the point of all this. And it's a broad macro vision that I think moving forward, TCU's in a great, great spot.
Marshall, as a player, when you have big broadcasts like ABC come and do the games, what does it make you think about the game coming up?
Well, it's just, it adds legitimacy, a layer of legitimacy. And, for me, I was a guy who, I wanted to play at the next level, but it wasn't a sure thing.
Yeah.
But when we came here, we knew, okay, this is a big deal. I got to step my game up. I got to get my teammates ready to play. And you want to put your best foot forward. It's not like you don't when they're not here, but you're like, all right, this is another stage.
Higher stakes.
This is a higher stage, a higher stakes. And you want to put your best foot forward. And that, I think, can only raise the play, especially for a team now with a new regime, that I think teams go as the head leadership goes. When I see Sonny Dykes and I see his name, I think this, just steady. I think he's cold-blooded. I think he's kind, but I think he wants to step on people's throats. But he doesn't do the roller coaster ride.
No.
And this team is cold-blooded. They don't do the roller coaster ride. We're 5-0, undefeated right now. Regardless if it was the opposite, we're not even going to speak that into existence, but this would be the same team because these guys are taking after the leadership. And that's such a big thing when you're building a program.
Absolutely. And Jamie, you've been covering TCU football for a long time now. What do you think you've seen differently with the new Sonny Dykes era?
Well, you get into a rhythm and almost you maybe fall into some bad habits when there isn't much change over the course of a long period of time. And as much as we love the previous head coach here and, his statue is out there, there is no doubt that his legacy has put this program where it is today. There is no TCU football without Gary Patterson. It's easy to say that. But, from 2018 to last season, we saw some less than healthy habits starting to develop as far as culture was concerned, as far as work ethic was concerned inside the building. And that's a problem. Yeah. And it's a tough one to counter sometimes when you as a coaching staff are kind of in the same rhythm that you've always been in. You maybe don't see some of the things you used to pick up on. But realistically, I think the best thing that Sonny Dykes has done for the program this year is just bring a new energy, really kind of reinstating the culture that used to be in the program.
Yeah.
It's not an an unrecognizable culture.
That's not new.
From when TCU was winning in the past.
Yeah.
You know, we've seen this energy here before. You were on teams that brought this energy before, that had cultures like this before. But it's something that you can lose really quickly if you don't keep up with it. And I think that's the biggest thing Sonny Dykes has done to this point, is bring that back into play.
Absolutely. Like Marshall said, they're stable.
They're
They're
stable.
just staying right
Yeah,
here.
I've had conversations with him. His doors have been so open to former players, and that's been an incredible thing. You see, he's not afraid to do interviews, not afraid to be out there, but he's still himself. But speaking to him one-on-one, he's just like, there were so many things that were already great here. I just had to come in and just optimize. Tweak here, tweak there, add a little here, because there were talent in the building, and that's due to the last regime. But then they put their own stamp on it from a health standpoint with Coach Kaz. From a preparation standpoint with how they do things throughout the week. All that stuff comes into play, and that gets you a team, at least on the floor, that gets ready to compete for games like this. The rest is up to the players, the talent, the coaches, and the preparation.
Yes, absolutely it is.
Absolutely. And when we come back, we've got a very special guest, our very own LaDainian Tomlinson, going to be joining us. Stay with us. To Frogs Today pregame live. LT joining us here right now. We're going to go ahead and get started with some questions. Jamie, it looks like you're itching to ask a question. Go ahead, buddy.
Anytime the GOAT's on set, you got to get in there and ask some good questions. So, LT, I got to ask you, TCU's 5-0 right now. Sellout crowd for the second week in a row. Everything seems like it's rolling. Everything seems like it's going great. What has Sonny Dykes done in year one? I know you were on the search committee. You helped bring him in here. Did you expect this result so quickly in the Sonny Dykes era, and what do you think he's done to get us there so far?
Yeah, we did expect this, to be honest with you. We knew that we had talent here, and obviously, going back to Gary Patterson, he did a tremendous job accumulating talent and taking this program to a place that it hasn't been. But we felt like it was time for a new voice, obviously, and a fresh energy and, just kind of style of play. And Sonny Dykes has did that. The one thing that I love so much, though, is he's focusing right here with recruiting DFW area where, there's a lot of talent here, and we want to keep the kids here at home. I mean, look at this atmosphere. This is big-time football.
Absolutely.
And it brings me back to a quote, one of the coaches a long time ago said, this is why you lift all those weights.
Absolutely,
this is why you run those hills for days like this, and it's exciting.
Absolutely. I mean, being a former player as well, I play a little after you, but seeing this is just like it's surreal because we had moments where we had big games, but we're getting our mind right. We're in the locker room, we're doing all that stuff. Coach Dykes and Coach Kaz specifically have focused on the players' health and recovery. What about that do you think has been so revolutionary, especially versus when you played versus when I played, even from the past regime, that's been so beneficial for the team so far?
Well, I think the data proves that it works, right?
Yeah.
How you take care of your body, the amount of sleep you get, what you put into your body.
Yeah.
That stuff helps. These guys are well-trained athletes. It's like having a Lamborghini or Porsche and not taking care of it, putting the wrong type of gas in it, right? So you have to approach it in that manner. These athletes today, you can get the best out of them if you put the right things in their system. And someone like me, I just started to learn that later in my career.
Man.
I wish I would have known that, early in my career. Man, I might be still playing like Tom Brady, right?
Yeah.
I feel the same exact way. Golly. Okay.
Absolutely. And I want to get a little more specific. Talk to me about Kendre Miller. That's a name that we've seen a ton of growth from, and I'm always expecting a big game from him. What do you like about him?
Well, I love the maturity that he's shown. I mean, think about it. Kendre was a guy, he was the second guy.
Yeah.
He had another guy. Obviously, we know the guy's moved on to Ole Miss. I won't say his name.
Don't need to say it. That's all right. That's all right.
But Kendre was, waiting his turn. He was getting those reps. He was getting the experience. And now it's his show. And you see a guy that's matured, that understands how to run the football, and he's leading the nation in yards per carry. Are you kidding me right now?
Yeah.
I mean, are you kidding me right now? He's big time.
I mean, it's Miller time. Let's
Yeah,
just say it like
I
that.
love it.
It's always Miller time. And, you think about the rest of this running back crew, too. You've got Amari DiMercato, who's just kind of emerged after a couple of years here as well. We all know and we all love to see the running back tuck that ball and run it. But against a team like Oklahoma State that can bring a lot of pressure against a quarterback, blocking is just as important. How much pride did you take in lining up and just hitting someone in the mouth to keep your quarterback healthy?
Oh, well, listen, that's how you win. Actually, the keys to winning and losing is blocking and tackling.
Right.
You know that.
Yeah.
That's at the end of the day. Listen, it looks pretty when the offense rolls back and they throw a ball down the field, and Quentin comes down. That's pretty, right?
Yeah.
Or the running back breaks open, wide open, for a touchdown run. But it's those big boys up front that really does the dirty work, and they don't get the credit. So a lot of times it's the mindset that they have to start the game, and on days like this, that's what it's going to take. They have to control the line of scrimmage today, and I guarantee you they're ready for that test.
Nice. I'm going to keep my foot on the gas pedal there. I'm a lineman. You start talking at me, I start getting angry. I want to go out on the field right now.
You got to win a soapbox.
Yeah, TCU's offensive line, recruiting has changed over the years. Guys have gotten bigger, but able to attract better athletes, even than me. I'll be humble and say, there's guys towering over me that are blocking for us right now. How much would you have loved? You had your hog mollies here. They were scrappy. I met a lot of them. I know them. They're scrappy.
The big uglies.
The big uglies. But how much would you love to block behind some of these guys?
Oh, you kidding me? Man, this summer I was hanging out here on campus, obviously having my football camp.
Yeah.
And a lot of these guys came to volunteer just to work with some of the offensive linemen.
Yeah.
And I'm looking up like, are you kidding me right now? Dude, I can hide behind these guys, literally.
Yeah.
And so for our running backs, you mentioned DiMercato, a guy that's fast and explosive like him. Man, it's hard to see him.
Yeah.
You get behind one of those big boys, and then all of a sudden he hits a gap and he's gone. So that's what I look forward to today. Let's go get it, man. I'm excited.
Hey, you get me revved up.
TCU's got the leading explosive plays percentage in the Big 12 this year. They've got 7 touchdowns from 50 yards out or further. Do you expect to see more of that today?
I do. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this is – these are the moments that these kids have been waiting for. Big-time football, 2 5-0 teams on national television. Yeah. As an athlete, you dream about, as a kid, playing in games like this. And the best athletes, they're going to show up today. And there's going to be some big plays. There's no question about it. But we want more big plays than they will. I think our defense will accept the challenge. They know what Oklahoma State presents. They got a great quarterback themselves. Yeah. But guess what?
Hey.
It's TCU time, and we're going to rock the house today.
And,
TCU's got a pretty great quarterback as well in Max Duggan, am I right?
Absolutely.
And I want to talk about your kin. You got some kin on the team, keeping the Frog Blood family line going. What are the kind of things you've been telling him about being a pro, growing into himself as a player? He's playing a different position. But football, from a mental standpoint, there's a lot of things that overlap. What have you been talking to THT about?
Well, we just talk about the approach of being a professional one day at a time. your priorities, handling your business. First it's about what you do over on the other side of the campus, right? At the university, in the classroom. It starts there first. And then what kind of teammate are you?
Yeah.
Are you a guy that's going to be a leader? That the most important thing that I believe that was ever said about me from the younger guys is, hey, I learned this from LT. Like, that's the greatest thing any of us older guys can have on the younger generation. And if they can say that about Travius when he leaves here, then he's done a heck of a job.
I agree wholeheartedly.
And before we let you go, I want to go ahead and get your thoughts on a score prediction for today.
Yeah, so I think this early on, I think it'll be a really good game. It might be some back and forth, but I think there'll also be some defensive stops, But at the end of the day, I'm saying TCU 37, Oklahoma State 25.
Okay.
Ooh, all right.
I like it. I like it. I'm always Frogs by 90. And when we come back, we've got a lot more where this came from.
Welcome back into Frogs Today live pregame. We've talked a ton about Kendre Miller, and we could go on and on and on about this guy. He's always got to play whipped up for us. But Jamie, I know you want to talk about the Oklahoma State side. Go ahead, get into it.
Look, Oklahoma State has a really capable running back. His name's Dominic Richardson, and that name should be familiar to TCU fans because, we had just had LT on the set. Talked about a former running back that's not here anymore. He's over in the SEC now in Mississippi.
Yeah.
But there's a reason that guy had a scholarship to come here in the first place, and it's because there was a kid named Dominic Richardson who was committed to the Horned Frogs, who was all ready to come here and wear purple, who they had to have a conversation with and say, well, we're actually going to give this offer to somebody else.
Yeah.
And that's a really challenging part of recruiting that doesn't get talked about a lot, but it is a part of the business. It's a tough part of the business for these kids to learn too. Richardson fortunately found himself in a really good situation up in Stillwater, and he's contributing to this offense really well. But he talked this week about this game. He said, anytime I see that purple, I'm going to run really hard.
Yeah. It's a big game.
We've talked a lot about Oklahoma State's passing offense, the Spencer Sanders' ability to throw it and to run it, but I would not be shocked, guys, if this was an opportunity for Dominic Richardson to show Frog fans what they were missing out on. He did it a little bit last year in Stillwater, had a couple long touchdown runs against the Frogs. That was a totally different defense than this one, obviously, but this is just another opportunity for a guy who maybe feels a little slighted by the Horned Frogs to come and get some blood today.
Yeah, and I can speak to the recruiting hustle, if you will, the road, that journey, where there's a lot of disappointment on your end versus when you commit on the team, that the coach that recruiting from another school.
Absolutely.
And absolutely, we could talk all day about, every game is just another game on the schedule. It's just TCU. No. He circled this at the beginning of the year.
This the one.
Little did he know that we'll be, undefeated, both matching up, but absolutely he's going to be running hard.
Oh, yeah.
He's going to be putting his pads down. He's going to be finishing runs. He's going to be nasty. That stuff comes from being emotional and being a human, and you absolutely understand it. I also believe that TCU is a better tackling team than we have been in a very long time.
Absolutely.
These guys have been flying to the ball, taking great angles. We call it a vice, where the inside guy forces the runner out, the outside guy forces him in, and they meet in the middle. TCU has been very sure tackling this year. It's going to get tested today, absolutely. It's going to be running behind. We call it running behind your pads, making guys miss, punishing, but the defense as a group just take it on as a unit, and absolutely I think they're up for the challenge, but it's going to be a great matchup.
You got to see a lot from D Winners today. You got to see a lot from the law firm of Hodge and Hodges today. Guys going out there flying around, making big plays, making big hits. This is a TCU defense that missed a couple tackles against Kansas that allowed them to break some plays wide open. And if that continues today, then guys like Dominic Richardson could have another big day.
Absolutely, and those missed tackles lead to setting up the run, setting up play action, and then deeper explosive plays down the field. So getting guy, even if he falls forward for 2 or 3, keeping him there, not letting him fall forward for 4 or 5, gets them in third downs, stops them on third downs, fourth downs. That stuff adds up over the course of the game. And so being sure, tackling as a group, rallying to the ball. The big thing that I've noticed this entire year from the first game was how ravenous the defense has been. Even when it's one guy, he's got him by his shirt, the rest of the team is on the way. You get 5, 6, 7, 8 defenders, no matter where the ball ends up on the field, rallying to the tackle, that's a sign of a well-coached defense, a hungry defense, a defense that's playing for each other. I look for that to continue today. It's going to be a test, but that is something that has to travel both home and away. It's something that has to show up every single week.
Absolutely. And it's going to be exciting to compare on the post-game show Dominic Richardson and Kendre Miller's stats. I'm excited to see it. I'm thinking they're going to look pretty similar. I'm not going to lie to you.
We'll see it. As long as the score is going in the right direction.
Absolutely.
Stats really don't matter as much, but you're absolutely right. These are two guys who are primed to have big days.
TCU averaging over 200 yards a game. Oklahoma State giving up over 100 yards a game. Something's got to give.
Something's got to give.
Vice versa, the same. These are both offenses that are very similar. We talked about that before, both with a lot of playmakers. And we got to see some timely stops and not let drives be extended and not let drives be sputtered when you're on offense as TCU.
Absolutely. And when we come back, we've got score predictions for today, and then we're going to let you go. welcome back into Frogs Today pregame live. As we get ready to go ahead and go watch the game, we want to give you our score predictions for the game today. Right now, guys, I've got 38 TCU, 14 Oklahoma State.
Oh, wow, that's a big gap. All right. Listen, this is going to be a high-scoring game. A lot of touchdowns being scored, a lot of explosive plays. I think TCU it has the momentum. They have confidence, and they feel like a team that's ready to take the reins of this opportunity.
No doubt.
TCU 41, Oklahoma State 38.
Oh,
Wow,
I like that one.
We're going to be pretty close in lockstep here, Marshall. Here's the thing about TCU through 5 games this year. They came into this season with no expectations nationally.
Yeah.
No expectations to do anything of note. A lot of people, a lot of national pundits had them picked 3-9 overall, at best 3-6 in conference play. Nobody thought that the Horned Frogs were going to be able to do anything this year. Through the first 3 games of non-conference, they did everything that they were asked to do. They finished 3-0. Then the Oklahoma Sooners came to town.
Yeah.
It was supposed to be a big game. It was hyped up. It was nationally televised. It was on ABC, just like the game today.
Yeah.
And TCU came out and laid the hammer down on Oklahoma and beat their absolutely pants off 55-24.
Laying the groundwork.
Then they went up to Kansas. Game day, sold-out crowd, new era for the Jayhawks under Lance Leipold. And what happened? 38-31, TCU took that victory in spite of some hiccups here and there. We still have not seen a perfect football game from the Horned Frogs yet this year. But what I've seen through 5 games is an offense that's starting to build.
Yes.
Not only just momentum, but build on their base sets and start getting more creative with what they're calling.
Yes.
What I've seen is a defense that's starting to play a little bit more freely, starting to utilize their speed, running to the ball, getting their gang tackling people a little bit more. What I know about Oklahoma State right now is that they're banged up. What I know about Oklahoma State right now is that they let a third-string Texas Tech quarterback hang 31 on them in their home stadium last week.
How many snaps they played last week?
How many snaps?
Oklahoma State defense played 104 snaps.
104 snaps last week. They were pretty worn out probably after that. A lot of running around out there. All I know is that if a third-string quarterback can do that, I said this before Oklahoma. If Adrian Martinez can do that to Oklahoma's defense, Max Duggan can do that to Oklahoma's defense.
Absolutely.
If Baron Morton can do what he did to Oklahoma State last week, Max Duggan can do that to Oklahoma State this week. Give me the Horned Frogs 42, Oklahoma State 38. It's going to be a heck of a football game, but the Horned Frogs are going to come out on top.
I love to hear it.
I love it. Max Duggan is really that guy, and we're going to see that guy all over the football field today. Thanks for joining us, and be sure to join us again for the post-game show.